So this should be fun. Ooh, still hot. Today we're going through all of the 88 books I read last year, and I will simply be telling you if, in my opinion, they're worth reading or not worth reading. I have all of my books listed in my trusted notebook. Let's dive in. By the way, I am cheating a little bit because my list of books from 2025 also includes a list of books from December 2024, just because that's when I started my channel and that's when I started recording the books I have read, and I didn't want to leave these December 24 books out because they would be these little orphans not belonging anywhere. So I threw them in here. And so the first title is My Name is Lucy Barton. I love Elizabeth Strout's writing, so this is a definite yes from me. This is a book that is worth your time. Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. It's a yes. Playing Games. This was probably one of the lighter pieces of fiction I read. I'm going to say yes, worth reading, especially if you have a sister, because this book is about sisterhood. 1984 by George Orwell. Yes, just make sure you are in good mental health when you're reading this book because it's very depressing. Black Vodka, short story collection by Deborah Levy, whose nonfiction I adore, not so much as fiction. However, I am going to say yes, this is still worth reading. Breakfast at Tiffany's. I think this is going to be my first no, just because I really didn't enjoy this novel and maybe because I didn't quite get it. The Wolf Border by Sarah Hall. Yes, 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 that book was included in my video on the best books I read in 2025. The Handmaid's Tale. Again, yes, just make sure you're in a good mental health because this is another depressing classic. The Belgia, same goes here. Gorgeous writing, but overall extremely sad. Things We Do Not Tell the People We Love, a collection of short stories by Huma Qureshi, who also wrote Playing Games, which I've just mentioned. I'm not crazy about short stories normally, but this was very good and I remember I liked it quite a lot. Carmilla, a classic about a female vampire. Yes, read it. Who Among Us? Again, another classic I'm going to say no to, even though I feel bad about saying to you, don't read a book that is considered a classic. Another one I just didn't get. The Moment of Lift. This is a piece of non-fiction written by Bill Gates' ex-wife. I was surprised how much this book affected me, how well it is written, how it will make you think about the world and its inequalities. I would say definitely give this one a chance, no matter what you think about Bill Gates, no matter what you think about Melinda Gates. Probably everyone should read it. Daisy Miller. I am still trying to figure this one out, but to say it's not worth reading, it's probably too harsh. Definitely not my favorite classic, but again, I'm not sure whether that's because I just don't get it at all. And also, probably not the best writing I have come across in 2025. So actually, no, I'm changing my mind. I'm going to say no. Please don't hate me. The Last Days of Mira. I'm a big fan of Nicki French psychological thrillers. This was the latest thriller. You'll definitely enjoy this book. So yes, worth reading if you like psychological thrillers. A Streetcar Named Desire, my introduction to Tennessee Williams. Loved it. Yes. Read it. Scaffolding. Oh, it's a no. I so wanted to love it because it had the premise and all elements that I was supposed to love. And unfortunately, the way it was put together, it was a big chore to finish it. Same goes for Enter Ghost. I am so sorry. I know loads of people really like this book, and for me this was a struggle again. On the face of it, it should have been a winner for me, but I think it was just trying to be too many things, and this is why it just lost me. Things I don't want to know, a piece of non-fiction, which is a kind of memoir, I would say, but also it's got lots of other elements to it. This is by Deborah Levy. Absolutely loved it. One of the best books I read in 2025. Please do check it out. A Rose for Winter. This is a travel memoir and I read it when I was in Spain. This is set in southern Spain as well, so maybe because I was in the setting that this book was about, I really enjoyed it. Yes, this one is worth reading. Standing Her Ground. This is another collection of short stories, classic short stories written by women, including Mansfield, Woolf, Gaskell. I am going to say yes, this is worth reading. And the next book I read was To Kill a Mockingbird. Yes. Yes, yes, yes. Hetty Dorval, by a Canadian classic writer, published by Persephone Books. I think that overall was a very pleasant surprise and I enjoyed it. It's a gentle coming of age story with a great message hidden behind it. So yes, worth reading. At number 25 we have Panenka by Ronan Hashon. No surprise here. I am going to say yes, please read it. Beautiful writing about ordinary life and about a middle-aged man who is trying to make sense of it all. American Marriage. This was okay. It definitely wasn't the book that swept me off my feet and it wasn't the best book I have ever read. I remember it dragging a little bit, but I don't think it deserves to say that it is not worth reading. Overall, it was okay. It was a decent piece of writing, and so I'm going to say yes. Where Angels Fear to Tread. This was my first EM 4-star. This was a bit of a shocker, and I don't think that everyone will like it, but I'm going to say yes. Worth reading. The Safe Keep is next at number 28. This won Women's Prize for Fiction, and actually this was my predicted book to win. I did enjoy it, and I remember turning the pages quite quickly despite guessing the huge twist in the novel. So excellent writing, and for that reason I am going to say yes to that one. 29 is Effie Breast by Theodore Fontaine. I loved that book, but again I don't think this is the type of book that will resonate with every single person, but because I loved it I'm going to say yes, please check out Effie Breast by Theodore Fontaine. The Franchise Affair by Josephine Tey, my newly discovered favorite classic author. Do I need to say anything else? Yes, definite yes, please read it. Nesting by Roisin O'Donnell, which was longlisted but wasn't shortlisted for Women's Prize for Fiction in 2025. It definitely should have been shortlisted instead of at least a couple of other books that were shortlisted, in my humble opinion. Excellent writing and a piece of literary prose that is a huge page turner, while at the same time exploring deep but important themes. Fundamentally, another title that was on the list of Women's Prize for Fiction. I enjoyed the first half of the book, and then the second half it just got so repetitive and a bit preachy and overall a bit too much. So it's a no from me. In fact, I can see that the April reads that I am just quoting now, most of them will be shortlisted titles for Women's Prize for Fiction, because that's what I did last year. I read all the shortlisted books. And so the next one is All Fours. I was surprised that I liked it. Considering how experimental the story was, I am not normally a huge fan of experimental, whatever it is, story or experimental prose. I really just enjoy good old fashioned storytelling about, human lives and human condition. However, this one, despite how bonkers that was, I liked it. Actually, talking about bonkers books, I've just realized that I've missed out from my January reads another bonkers novel titled The Driver's Seat. I can't believe I missed that one out because that is one book that really stood out last year. This is one of those books where definitely the author plays with you. I think if you're going to read this book, then I am going to link below a video that is the only video that I found on BookTube talking about this book and shedding a little bit of a light on the story here through the analysis of narration. So I guess The Driver's Seat, it's a yes, but just be prepared to have to do some work to get it. That's not saying that I am getting this book. I'm still not getting this book, but I don't think it's entirely fair to say that it's not worth reading. Muriel has done something very, very different here that I have not seen any other writers do. Anyway, going back to my April reads, because that's where we were. After All Fours, I read Good Girl, another shortlisted book that loads of people loved and I hated. I'm sorry. The whole nightclub scene in Berlin, constant drag taking, apparently does not appeal to me. And in this particular book, which I kind of get what it was trying to do, because there was some deeper messaging that this book was trying to give us about an immigrant life, I feel like that messaging got lost in that repetitiveness of the same scene over and over again, of the nightclubs and drug taking and inappropriate relationships. It's a no from me. The Persians, no. I have no idea what it was doing on the shortlist for Women's Prize for Fiction. Tell Me Everything by Elizabeth Strout. It's a yes from me. I have read 2 books by Elizabeth Strout and I'm going to read the rest of them. The only thing I'm going to say is don't read Tell Me Everything unless you've read the other books in this series. I know the internet will tell you it doesn't matter which order you read them in. It's not true. There are some spoilers. So if you are going to read Lucy Barton series, do it in order. The Tale by Joseph Conrad is the next title. Very dark short story or novella? I don't remember. I remember it being very, very short. Yes, dark, but worth reading. Madonna in the Fur Coat. For some reason, this is one of those classics that just blew up on BookTube last year or 2 years ago. So many people loved it. I have no idea why. It's a no from me. Way too melancholic for me. The Cost of Living by Deborah Levy, her second piece of non-fiction as part of her trilogy, and I loved it. It's a yes. The Woman Who Had Two Navels. This was me trying broaden my horizons and read an author from Philippines, a country I have never read from before. Unfortunately, I just didn't understand it. There was so much mysticism and slightly weird magical realism. I would probably have to do quite a bit of research to actually get that book on that basis. I think it's a no. Ghosts by Henrik Ibsen at number 41. Yes, I loved that play. I still think about this play. Ibsen just had me turning the pages, and also there's something very modern in that play in terms of the moral messaging that's in there. Amma at number 42, longlisted for Women's Prize for Fiction, and I enjoyed it quite a lot in the first probably 1/3 of the novel. The rest, so. However, overall, I think it is worth reading. The Grapes of Wrath by John Steinbeck, one of my favorite classics I read last year, so it is a very strong yes. Real Estate, final piece of non-fiction trilogy by Deborah Levy. My least favorite out of the 3 books that I read, but still very, very good. So yes, worth reading. Crooked Seeds. I was surprised how good I thought that book was after I read it. This is set in South Africa. Very short novel, but packs a punch. Definitely worth reading, and actually I do have on my list to read more from Karen Jennings. The Island, Spanish classic set just at the outbreak of the Spanish Civil War. Pretty dark, but yes, worth reading. Secret Garden is next, and I enjoyed that classic, so I am going to say, of course, yes, please read it if you haven't read it yet. A short break. Right, let's get back into it. So now we halfway through the year because we are entering my June reads. The first book I read in June was The Member of the Wedding. This was my first Carson McCullers. Very strange book, but I think I still want to read more of her books, so this is going to be yes. At 49 is Gloss, which was a retelling of a myth. I don't remember which myth it was, but I think I'm going to say no. I don't think you need to be seeking this one out. Bonjour Tristesse, a French classic, yes, definitely worth reading. Orbital, the book that won the Booker Prize, I would say yes, worth reading as long as you approach it understanding that this is really not your typical fiction. I would call it more of a meditation. So as long as you manage your expectation in that sense, you'll be fine. The Bee Sting. Okay. This is the statement that is going to get me cancelled, isn't it? But I am going to say no. This is not worth your reading. This is a huge novel, loved by many, but it just didn't work for me, and I really regret reading it, and I wish that I read something else. For example, one of the big classics that are on my list. For me, this book was a waste of time. If you want to know why, I will link my review below. Again, this is just my humble opinion, but this is one of those books that was trying to be very clever instead of just focusing on the story and trusting the reader. Anyway, let's move on. The final book I read in June was The Death of Us by Abigail Dean. Abigail Dean is a contemporary writer. She writes extremely dark psychological thrillers, and this one is not exception. So do check for trigger warnings. However, I remember eating this one up, and so it's a yes from me. Okay, July books. After Leaving Mr. Mackenzie, this is a little bit less known novel by Jean Rhys, and I have got her famous White Sargasso Sea on my bookshelf, which I am going to read this year because I finally finished reading Jane. This wasn't anything mind-blowing, but I find her writing very intriguing, and overall I highly appreciated that novel. So I'm going to say yes for that one. Next one is My Cousin Rachel. Come on, 100% yes. Longbraid River by Liz Moore. Again, very strong piece of contemporary fiction. Great writing, which on the face of it is a mystery, but not really, because crime is just this piece of scaffolding around which Liz Moore builds this hugely rich portrayal of characters and lots of other family and societal themes. Ethan Frome by Edith Wharton. Yes, definitely worth reading. Prepared to be shocked. And then I read Still Life, which again wasn't the best book I read last year. I know loads of people love this book. It didn't blow me away like other books did, but still worth reading. The Years by Annie Ernaux. Excellent piece of writing about French history blended with personal history. The Wild Duck by Henrik Ibsen at number 60. Yes, I generally have been enjoying reading drama in 2025, and I love Ibsen. It's a yes from me. Freshwater for Flowers. I love that book. Yes. definitely worth reading. The Details by Jagenberg. I think this was probably one of the most beautiful pieces of writing I experienced in 2025. And I'm talking about the quality of writing. I think if you, someone who is aspiring to be a writer, you have to read this book. The Uncommon Reader by Alan Bennett. Cute, funny, relaxing. It's a yes from me. The Guernsey Literary Potato Peel Pie Society, known as the potato book in my family, because we were all taking turns reading it during the summer holidays. Great book. Please read it. One of those stories that talks about difficult themes but somehow manages to be very uplifting and very hopeful. Small Things Like These by Claire Keegan. Probably most of you have read this already. Yes, worth reading, of course. Olga by Bernard Schling. You know what I'm going to say, because this was my top read of 2025. 100% yes. Just exquisite. The Mayor of Casterbridge by Thomas Hardy. Overall, I liked it, and I'm reading more Hardy in the coming years, so it's a yes. The Secret Painter. This was a random non-fiction I wasn't planning to read last year, but somehow I ended up reading it, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. If you like stories about an underdog, this one's for you. The Thornbirds. I am so happy I read this last year. Just swept me off my feet. I highly recommend it. Please read it. And in Spectacles, this is a play which I read because my son was reading it for school and he wanted to discuss it with me. Yes, worth reading, although a little bit preachy, but still. Stoneyard Devotional. Now, this is a novel by Charlotte Wood, very highly regarded writer, very much liked book, and I did see that it was actually on lists of many people as their favorite book they read last year. Unfortunately, it didn't work for me at all. The way it was written, it was just so fragmented and disconnected. It probably should have been a collection of short stories. Not sure what's happening with my voice there. So, I'm afraid, no, I don't think it's worth your time. Again, this is just my little humble opinion. Three Men in a Boat, very much loved English classic, hilarious but repetitive. However, overall, I think this is a book that is worth your time. Stoner by John Williams. I thought I was going to love it more, but it's still a very decent piece of writing, and one that hits you in places that have never been hit before, if that makes sense. So yes, read that one if you haven't yet. Heart of Darkness by Joseph Conrad. I'm not going to lie that this was an easy read. Something about the structure of the sentences there. This was extremely hard work. However, to say that this is not worth reading is probably not fair. So I'm going to say yes, on the basis that you just need to be prepared to read it several times to understand it fully, which is what I'm going to do. Drive Your Plow Over the Bones of the Dead by Olga Tokarczuk. Fantastic book, of course, and the most unique protagonist you will ever meet in any of the books you are reading, I promise you. So yes, read that one, I beg you. How to Think Like a Woman. This is one of the very few pieces of non-fiction I read last year. Very interesting take on philosophy today and how it's been taught over the centuries. Yes, worth reading. Closely Watched Trains, a Czech classic from 1960s. Probably better as a movie than as a book, but still worth reading. Little Boy Lost, another Persephone classic. Yes, worth reading. I liked it. Trespasses by Louise Kennedy. I gobbled it up. Huge page turner. I can't believe this was a debut novel. Very tense, very atmospheric, with an element of forbidden romance. You're going to love it. Also, I've started watching Channel 5 or Channel 4 TV series based on this book, and it's looking really good. It's got Gillian Anderson in it. Check it out as well. A Tree Grows in Brooklyn by Betty Smith. Just lovely, lovely classic set in 1920s in Brooklyn. Whenever I think about this book, it always brings a smile onto my face, even though you've got so much hardship in that book. Well, with this next title, we are definitely changing the mood because we've got human acts, extremely dark book about the side of human nature that it's hard to believe it exists, but it does. An important piece of work, so yes, worth reading. Chess by Stefan Zweig. Yes, I liked it. Great introduction to his writing. Psychology of Money. The only self-help / personal development book I read last year, and actually this one surprised me. Very, very easy to read and definitely worth reading. I think especially if you are a young person and you read this book, it will give you this unfair advantage. Okay, we've got the final month of December, and in December first I read The Artist by Lucy Steed. Overall, I'm sorry, it's gonna be a no. I think it's gonna be a no from me because it's just not book for me personally. It was just too lukewarm, and I prefer my books to have a little bit more meat in them. War and Peace by Leo Tolstoy. I finished that book in December, and yes, worth reading. Not a perfect book, and definitely not the greatest novel of all time, which this is how it's referred to often. But yes, definitely worth your time. Northanger Abbey by Jane Austen. Probably the least loved book by Jane Austen, but I enjoyed it and it's hilarious. So yes, worth reading. And then we have My Beloved Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. I can't believe I only just read it in 2025. Where the heck have you been, Jane Eyre? Or should I say, where the heck have I been? Because this was one of the most wonderful discoveries for me personally last year, and I adore this book. Definitely will become my regular reread, this one. So yes, read it. If you've been silly like me and haven't read it yet, you have to read it now. And then the final book of 2025 was a collection of short stories by Tove Ditlevsen titled The Umbrella. I was blown away by this short story collection, which, like I said, I'm not crazy about short stories, but the writing here was just amazing and it blew me away. So yes, please read it, and it's not gonna take you very long to read it because the book is tiny. So that's the whole list. Please let me know, especially the books that you thought were not worth your time. I'm very much interested in these, and of course you will probably disagree with some of the titles I have put on that list myself. That's the beauty about reading. Everyone's gonna feel differently about a book. However, I do hope that you found this video helpful, especially if you, based on my previous videos, share similar tastes, reading tastes to mine. Then, you know, feel free to slightly rely on my assessments, or even not so slightly, but totally rely on them. Thank you so much, and as always, I will see you next Friday. Bye for now.